Everybody, welcome to this webinar. This is Kei Kimani. I am the Managing Director here at Spectre.ai, and this is our Q4 full year results webinar. Today is the 28th of April, 2019. I do thank everyone for making it on a Sunday, and I believe it's also an Easter Sunday, so for some of you it's also a holy day. Now, as always, this webinar is recorded and it will be posted to our investor relations section of the website and also on the YouTube channel for later viewing. Next, I will read you a quick disclaimer and then we can get things started. So this webinar is recorded and it will be distributed in social media. It may include forward-looking statements, but these are strictly for educational purposes only and not to be deemed as investment advice. Spectre, as a trading platform, is strictly closed to US citizens. The ownership of SXDT or SXUT tokens by US citizens is forbidden and against the terms and conditions of Spectre.ai. Financial trading is risky and you may lose all of your funds invested. A recording of this webinar will be available on Spectre.ai/investors. All right, so we have now completed our first year of operation. The calendar year end is, of course, 2018 December, but as you know, our fiscal year end is March, March 2019. So our first full year of operations ended at the end of March, and now around 25 days later, we are holding a full year results webinar for the previous 12 months. We can start with the numbers, starting with the traders. At the end of the fourth quarter, there were around 1,900 active traders on the platform, and this is up around 38% quarter on quarter. The daily active trader count is around 20% of this figure. It varies, generally speaking, between 15 and 20%. And it's also worth noting that the 1,900 traders, this is a monthly active figure. So traders that have deposited and at least traded one trade on the system. The daily active traders are obviously the more addicted traders, the ones that are very comfortable with the system. And of course, this is the more important figure for us longer term. The liquidity pool, as you will recall, had increased to almost 14,000 ETH in Q3, predominantly owing to some pretty good treasury operations that were conducted by the firm, and of course a sharp drop in the price of Ethereum versus the dollar back then. By the end of Q4, it was largely static on a dollar basis, and it was at around 12,101 ETH, with the slight difference, of course, being because Ethereum has actually strengthened a little bit in the last quarter. The volumes traded since launch are 6.1 million, and this includes the fully decentralized wallets or the fully decentralized accounts as well. And this is in line with our bear case scenario communicated to our token holders at the start of the project in December 2017, roughly speaking. The decentralization factor is a figure we like to track. This is basically the number of live actively traded accounts on a monthly basis divided by the total monthly active user base. And this is just 1.9%. Remember, this has started at somewhere around 3% in the first quarter, and it's been gently nudging down as cryptocurrency adoption generally fails to really take shape. But the technology exists, it works. We have 20, 30 traders who believe in decentralization. They're trading decentralized. They understand the drawbacks in terms of the economics, but they also understand in terms of safety, it is the most unparalleled way of trading because it is truly brokerless. You're just trading directly against the liquidity pool. We expect this factor to actually increase over the very long run when blockchain adoption happens. And by a very long run, we're talking 5 years plus. But actually, because a lot of our growth is going to be predicated on the fiat market, and we will start to see a very large uplift in volumes towards the end of this year. We think this factor will probably edge closer to zero, just from a mathematical standpoint. It'll just be a few percentage points, and then it will head up in the long term. So the SXUT take-up factor, which is a very important metric, it shows the health of the SXUT being actually used as a utility token in our product range, which at the moment is very small. It is just our first year, but it's actually edged up closer to 50%. It was at 45% in the previous quarter, and I think close to 40% the quarter before that. So it's a nice little trajectory there. Once the exchange is live, we will be using a mechanism in the background that allows fiat traders to just send the firm to the client account to send fiat currency. And then we, on the treasury side, will just buy the equivalent amount in U tokens and retire them. This way, we bridge the gap between new people that are coming to trade on the platform and not actually understanding the steps required to actually go ahead and procure SXUT tokens. That's a big knowledge gap. The bulk of the world doesn't understand blockchain, they don't understand cryptocurrency exchanges, and they don't need to. That's something we will do fully in the back end, of course, with appropriate KYC and everything in place. So we expect this take-up factor, whether it increases from here or not, it remains to be seen. But what's interesting, of course, to show is that of the people that are trading every day, there is a significant uptake, and we'll see how that fares also on the Betverse side of things. Generally speaking, the way the privileges are structured is it's pretty captive. If you want to have an edge trading against the markets, you want to get higher payouts, better entries, you want to have a range of privileges that money can't buy, traditional money, but SXUT can, then you probably are, from a trading standpoint or from an investor standpoint, probably giving yourself the necessary advantages if you do own SXUT. So we're very happy with that figure. The total amount of rewards paid to SXDT, which is our reward-bearing token, to token holders of that token in the first fiscal year is a little over $500,000. This is organic payouts. This is not rechanneling of funds or anything, spooky like that. This is either generated from investments or generated from the actual trading on the platform. Of this figure, around I think 125, 120 in that range. So somewhere around $25,000 in that range is the special dividend as the special reward. If you recall, this was communicated at somewhere between 20 and 100K at the end of the previous quarter. So it has come in towards the lower end of the range. The total amount of winnings on the platform, please note this is not withdrawals. This is actually the amount traders have won, is 1.9 million US dollars in the last year. Okay, so that's a pretty decent amount. It shows a range of things. It shows the fact that obviously there are winning traders on the platform. It shows also the fact that it's a pretty significant number as a proportion of the total volume traded. So that's pretty important. Total volume is around 6 million plus. And the important thing to note also is that the liquidity pool is in a very healthy shape after the first year, despite this. So this validates a lot of what has been said, in the white paper stages, almost a year and a half ago now. And the final figure which we track is the number of fraud incidents. From our side, this figure is still at zero. You can Google Spectre. You won't find any incidents that put us in a bad light in the sense of us withholding withdrawals or anything like that. Of course, there are clients who complain about quote feed prices and things like this, but from our side, there has been absolutely zero fraud, and we're very pleased to say that because normally by this time, brokers get so excited that they end up fleecing clients 3 to 6 months in. So we're happy to see this. What I thought would be interesting to share with all of you is so, and this is really interesting. It goes to show the other side, the flip side. Um, it's basically that you give people a fair trading environment and you will get a lot of bad apples as well. We have had 7 incidents, two of which our legal team has got involved in, almost $22,000. Um, I won't say stolen because they weren't necessarily successful in doing so, but let's just say they abused the terms and conditions of the system. They applied uh, certain malpractices, which obviously our red flags picked up, which is the good thing. So it shows that the risk management worked. We have various, and they tried to defraud the system, right? So they're like defrauding a broker that actually hasn't engaged in any fraud. I just find that really interesting. Uh, so obviously those people are banned. This is again, it's 7 incidences involving in total around 22 traders. It's still small, but it still goes to show that it's not like this is this it's a one-sided game here where it's literally traders versus brokers and brokers are the bad guys. We are an example of if you provide a true and fair environment, yes, the majority will cherish it, but some will also try to exploit it. So I thought I would just bring it up. Okay, so in terms of the guidance, where did we actually land? If you recall, we revised our guidance down at the end of last quarter to the bear case. The original guidance was the base case. The firm expected total DApp volumes to fall in the 6 million to 15 million range for the full year. We came in at slightly above 6 million. The total number of traders was forecasted to come in around 1,600 to 2,000. We came in at around 1,900. In total for the full year, March ended 2019, we expected to pay out $500,000. And on top, a dividend of a reward of 20 to 100K. That would be the special reward. And that's exactly what we have done. It's around 525 in total. Now, in terms of the total rewards per token, you guys can run this calculation yourself when you have time, but it would come to around 0.0037 to 0.0042, given the token supply currently, which, by the way, remains unchanged. There have been obviously, although some of our advisors and some of our junior staff are now within their vesting rights to sell tokens, you would be the first to see this on the investor relations page under directors' dealings. So far, there's zero. And of course, because the blockchain is so transparent, you can also track our wallets. There have been no sales so far, and there are no plans to have any, even from the junior employees, and certainly no way from the senior ones for a few years. In terms of what this means from a yielding standpoint, because ours is one of the few yielding tokens in the space, as you know. The current figures, there has been a bit of an increase in the token price recently, but kind of averaging that out, it puts us somewhere between 1.7 and 2%. That's slightly above the kind of 1% you get in a tech sector play if you were to invest in US tech sector stocks, for example. Firm-wide reserves on a very good position, multi-year runway secured, and some very interesting things have been going on in the background, which I'll be giving you more color of. So generally speaking, if you look at the fact that we've also come in around 22% below the planned spend, the operating spend, as we were in this holding pattern mode, which I communicated to you last quarter. And we remain in this mode until all the engineering is finished later this year. We think that overall, this is of course our own view, that the token price here is pretty well supported by where we are in a project at this moment, especially if you look at us relative to some of the egregious valuations you see in the space, where there are companies that are literally not having the ability to launch a product um, after 2 years, but having millions in reserves, or they outsource the production of a product and they still can't get it right, and a range of complications. So the above guidance, which was revised down a quarter ago, has been met. And we will be providing financial guidance for March year-end 2020, 2021, and 2022, a more concrete guidance later this year when our development cycle completes, somewhere between July, August, all the way up to October. And one thing, of course, we can assure you is that this is because of the treasury operations we conducted last year. Uh, the project is secured for a range of years, right? It's not just something where we're like, okay, next year things get tight or the year after that. This is some very important measures we took last year. It took us 8 months. Some of the measures are only bearing fruit now, but generally speaking, it's panned out really well. So let's go over some product specific, I won't say release dates, but I'd say release months. Now that we are more, we're sort of getting to the business end of this year, towards summer, we are able to get a better grip on the timeline. Some things have actually been brought forward, like the BV API, because we're accelerating the development of the app. Certain lower priority things were pushed forward a month. Anyway, these are the new timelines. I'll go over these. And I also see some questions coming in about statements I've made about SXUT. Feel free to ask them, but just note that I'll answer them at the end of the webinar. So there's a formal Q&A. You can hold the questions until then. So early close and UK traders. We have an internal date of 10th of May, but I have given the entire room of May for this, just in case there are any further delays. But this we will see go live in May. Early close, by the way, was already launched earlier this year as a demo product, but we needed a few months of data to see how it actually is taken up, if there are any errors. Also, now that we have an API under construction, we need to make sure that it can't be botted or manipulated by hackers. And this was, for example, one of the fraud incidents that I was telling you a bit earlier today in the webinar. So there are quite a few checks that we need to do for each new product class that we add. So with early close, live real money should be May. UK traders, same thing. The two go hand in hand. In terms of July VIX products, this is largely unchanged. This is, for us, the most important product class on Spectre by far. Most likely will account for almost 80% of volumes, right? Just looking at competitor data, this is 80% at competitors. So this is a big driver of volumes. Right now, we don't even have it on the platform. So this is an important thing. The work will begin on this in June. And we think somewhere sort of July, August, we can put this out in beta. And then September, hopefully with live money. Full fiat, we expect it to be technically ready in July, but we do think there will be some more testing required. So August to September is when this will be fully ready. That means Spectre by then will be fully fiat operational, multiple payment service providers, gateways, etc. The API has been brought forward because the mobile app is finished, or it's literally a week or 2 weeks away from completion, and so therefore we will need the API to feed the data into the mobile app. So we think this will be done probably June, July, in that period. But with testing and for all its features, it will take up to October, most likely. The stocks, that remains unchanged. It's 2019, end of 2019. With CFDs, again, it's not an exciting product class for us. So that's, again, 2020. White label, same thing. Weekend trading, same thing, 2020. And then indices, bonds, and ICOs, again, it's a 2020 thing. Moving on to the gaming side. So the closed beta will end, the way things are looking now, possibly June, right? We got our license, which took a few months, but it's important that we are now fully licensed. And also, we have signed a major PSP, payment service provider. So, as you know, in this, yes, you can trade with Ethereum and blockchain, but that's not the focus. This is purely driven by fiat, this platform. And specifically, what we need to do to Betverse now and why the beta isn't out, let's say in April or May, it's more closer to June, August, is because we had last year done a bit of very basic research in our Telegram channel, and we just asked a few people, around 100 people, what do you think about a virtual coin, etc. And we decided then to keep things very simple and just allow gamers to deposit in dollars and euros, right? And also place bets and buy items in dollars and euros. And although that seems like kind of an Occam's razor simple solution, unfortunately, the gaming industry is more idiosyncratic. It's more niche. It's more you can get gamers. You can turn off a gaming community quite quickly if you don't do the right things. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to actually, although we're introducing a new concept, which is betting inside games, one versus CPU or P2P. What we're trying to do here is we're also trying to do as Romans do because we are in Rome, right? So what I mean by that is every competitor, loose competitor that we have seen, any sort of gaming site where you can enter and play for tournaments for money, mainly sponsored, right? Um, you, or if you want to buy a skin, or if you want to buy some sort of virtual item, you don't actually pay in dollars, you don't pay in euros, you actually pay uh, in a virtual currency. Okay, so it's not like the SXUT token. It's just a virtual currency that you buy on site. For example, I deposit $100 and I get 1,000 Betverse coins, right? So this virtual currency needs to be engineered into the product and also into the app, which is also well underway. With full fiat, it will allow gamers to obviously move back and forth. So you can convert the virtual currency and your winnings, which are in virtual currency, back to real money. That's the most important thing. There's an exchange rate. It's a very stable exchange rate. And of course, SXUT is fully supported for privileges. We'll discuss that later. Challenge mode is actually will be complete at the end of May, but I'm factoring in just 1 or 2 months of additional testing required. We most likely will be able to bring out challenge mode before we come out of beta. Challenge mode is really important because it allows gamers to not only just play against the DALP, play against the AI, but also to challenge any other gamer, uh, wager an amount, and start a round. And some of these mini games, if you play them against a computer, they're fun at first, but after around 5 days, you get bored, right? There's a lot of mind share attrition, we tend to call it here. And you see this with one of our competitors, Game.e. They literally are like a hamster in a wheel. They have to check out some pretty good games on a weekly basis to keep the mind share because the gamers just, they don't stick because the games don't offer that much value. If you add what we're doing with a multi-million-dollar liquidity pool back behind, if you add the ability for gamers to earn real money by betting, you increase the excitement level. If you then go on to actually allow gamers to connect and to face off against each other in a competitive environment where we just take a cut between the two, the winning and the losers, that's where things get really exciting, right? So we're adding these two layers on top of what would be a traditionally what you would see as a gamey platform or a mini clip or some of the other mini game sites. Okay. So that's the importance of P2P. That's largely on track. The developer portal was planned for later this year, much later this year. The good news is that it's finished. You should probably see this live next week. The affiliate portal is already done, so I've taken it off the to-do list. And the mobile app, I'll show you some pics soon. That's progressing to plan. The API is due June to September, which is roughly also when we think the mobile app will then launch. Because again, like Spectre, it depends on a fully functioning API. The game onboarding process continues unabated. We are always adding new games. There are around 40, 35 more games to add to Betverse in the next, I would say, 4 to 5 months from our side, and then another 15 games or so from third-party developers. For the exchange, so this is a dual license exchange. We already have the one of the licenses secured. The second is an Estonian license, and we expect basically our legal team and the head of our exchange is going to Estonia to speak to the regulatory authority there. This is part of the process of receiving the license. We do expect the grant in May for that. And internal beta will be also May. And then we expect a controlled beta internally, hopefully mid-June, but latest by July. The OTC area, I've said here August, but the way we're engineering it is that it comes with the exchange. It's not something we're going to build as an add-on. So most likely that if things go well, we should be able to launch that in July as well. And then the foreign token listings, looking at other safe projects to list that are properly KYC'd, ML'd, and that are doing well. This will be after October. And then, of course, the token research portal is a 2020 thing. So while we are in this holding period mode, if you want to call it, while the engineering or development cycle completes before we can properly scale up, here are a few noteworthy developments. Some may come not as a surprise to you, some may come as a big surprise to you. So I'll read them out. Firstly, of course, the Betverse app is underway. Here are some screenshots. We've also posted a few in the Telegram channel recently. Basically, 80%, we estimate around 70 to 80% of traffic will be mobile gaming traffic. It will be on our app. It won't be so much on the website. Certainly for the mini games, the P2P bit, the one versus CPU bit. And so this app really needs to look the part. And I'm pleased to say that so far it certainly is. It's not the same team that designed the Spectre app, which will be launched roughly at the same time. However, it's a pretty talented team, I must say. And so far, they're doing a really good job with this. And this will connect to our API. And then you can literally just go to your mobile, download the app, buy your Betverse coins, and start betting inside the games or challenging your opponents. The Betverse license in Curacao is secured, so it's fully licensed now. Also, the payment gateway, which I mentioned earlier, that's really important. That's not an easy feat, but that is done. And then, not linked to Betverse, but as you know, we have a substantial liquidity pool in place, which provides liquidity to Spectre, to Betverse. Obviously, a lot of this liquidity is untapped. Some of it is reserve liquidity, some of it is intermediate liquidity. And as you know, we invest some of this in well risk-adjusted return opportunities. So the DALP took a position of around 3% of the DALP in a TechCrunch featured company called Wings. This is a high-growth logistics play in the UK. You can Google it, of course. It's spelled WEENGZ, I believe, but don't quote me on that. But you'll find it, Google will find it. And we calculate the risk reward on this is around 5 to 1 based on our own estimates after having, almost I think it was a 6-month due diligence period. We have co-invested with other venture capital firms, and you can read up about it on TechCrunch as well. TechCrunch, by the way, for those of you that are new, a lot of you probably know it. It's the preeminent tech journal. very highly respected in the tech space. All the big companies generally get featured there. And so another, I would say, pretty promising development, one that has been kept, of course, under wraps, and we would like to keep it relatively low key until it's completely finished and out there, is GG Play. GG stands for Good Game. For those of you that are gamers, you know exactly what I mean. For those of you that are not gamers, I can tell you that there are some colloquialisms in the gaming space where gamers tease each other after a game, or they congratulate each other after a game or before a game. Generally speaking, it's customary once you finish a round with a gamer in any game, you just say GG, which stands for good game. And before the round, you say HF, which is have fun. So GG Play is a homegrown Betverse app, which we featured on Betverse. And in the last sort of 5 months, it's being developed by R&D. And very recently, 2 weeks ago, it was accepted as a partner by Overwolf, which is an Intel Capital-backed and TechCrunch featured company. They have around 3 million monthly active gamers and 1 million daily active gamers. And these gamers are all playing the big AAA titles, Dota, CSGO, Apex, Call of Duty, what have you, all of them, right? If you Google Overwolf, you can type it in, you can immediately see their presence in the market. It's a data integration company that collects in-game events. It's based in Israel, by the way. It's the exact type of company that we need to partner with to do two things: to bring DALP gaming to the world for AAA titles. And I'll tell you in a minute what GG Play does, but I'll only give an overview because the real meat we're going to obviously shove out at the AGM, right? Which is happening in London on 19th May. But generally speaking, what we're doing with GG Play is basically we allow gamers that are playing first-person shoot 'em ups to play against each other, and they can enter a specific round for a bounty. And the bounty may be, let's say, $1 a kill, or 50 cents a kill, or $10 a kill, depending on the premium nature of the round. And each time you kill another player, you get paid, right, from that player's balance. It's P2P purely, and the DALP takes a cut, and obviously that accrues to Betverse and SXDT token holders. The concept is completely new. It has never been done before, and this is obviously why Overwolf has partnered with us on this. We are in talks with their team now almost on a daily basis, and we think over the next few months, we have an internal deadline. It's not something I wish to communicate, but we think over the next few months, we can get this out in beta and showcased at the Overwolf marketplace. And if you look at the current apps they have, they get typically millions of downloads, right? So the important thing about this is that obviously it engages the DALP, but it also puts us in the, I would say, in the beauty pageant to a certain degree with some of the big players in the space, right? I mean, these are AAA titles. This isn't just Cure for Autism, right, on Betverse. This is sort of a different league, and very importantly, given their traffic, it gets a lot of eyes on the Betverse project. So that's an interesting development for the firm. And on that, I'll of course open it to Q&A. And thank you for your patience. You can now ask questions, and I'll be very happy to answer them. I see a question from Tri Wiyani. Any thoughts on moving to the EOS platform? No thoughts for now. We just wouldn't have the bandwidth to do that because the team is very busy in the development cycle. Tim Vervat has a question. He's asking if we retire the U tokens from fiat purchases, does that mean that they're forever in that user's account, effectively burning them? Yeah, so the user will effectively, they have the option to go ahead and procure them at the exchange. We don't force them that they have to send us fiat, right? But it takes a bit of steps, especially if they're new to cryptocurrency, and we can lose half the users there, if not 80% of them. But if they want to, they can go ahead and procure them and connect them to their Betverse account. Not a problem. In this case, they can switch on and off their privileges, right? Um, so, for example, we ping their Ethereum wallets. If they have enough use, X amount of privileges are active on Betverse. It's the same thing what we're doing in Spectre now. However, um, a more efficient way is for us to be the bowler, the buyer of last resort, do the treasury operation in the back end. They just pay slightly more because ultimately it's a time value calculation here, right? So it's a net present value of all future benefits accruing to them for this specific privilege discounted back to today, right? So let's say they pay $15 for higher payouts across the platform. They can do that. They just send us $15. We take the equivalent by you and we burn it. That's correct. So we retire it. It gets canceled. This means that the supply gets constricted over time. I see a question from Adina Friedman. When you say SXUT will be bought and retired on behalf of fair purchases, do you mean these tokens will be destroyed and burned? Correct. Adetayo is saying every time you give these type of webinars, you give a date for UK traders, but never materialize. How certain is this May date? You're 100% right. We were set to launch this the UK functionality. I think it was November or December, and I had said 2 weeks then. We are now at almost May, so I do apologize for the delay. There are some technical and regulatory hurdles because the landscape continuously has changed in the last 6 months. You can Google ESMA, you can see the changes that have happened there. Unfortunately, part of this has been not in our court, so to put it, but now I can safely tell you that early close is already out, by the way, and we've also tested it for 2 months. So now we have the necessary data on demo that allows us to go live. Once that's live, we can open the gates to UK traders. So looking at all of this, May is a very realistic period. So I do apologize for the delay on that. Okay, a question from Eddie B. Since you are planning on selling SXUT privileges directly to consumers who are not familiar with crypto, how will the SXUT versus ETH price fluctuation be handled? I imagine it won't be a great look if user makes a purchase and the price drops the next day, invalidating the purchase and requiring them to buy more. Yeah, so here's the thing. If you buy and retire tokens, you actually reduce this effect, what you're stating, Eddie. Because if you think about it, let's say the treasury operations purchase tokens on behalf of a fiat client on Betverse, and they purchase them and they hold them in treasury. And now let's say client B wishes to actually disable some of their privileges for you tokens on Betverse, right? In theory, the algorithmic link would entail us then selling client A's ceteris paribus here, right? It would entail us selling client A's equivalent U tokens that the B client wanted to disable. If we sell into the market, that creates a red order book, roughly speaking, right? I'm just painting a very rough example here, and that itself is a bad signal in the market. But it's, of course, from a technical standpoint, it's the right thing to do, right? Every time a client enables a privilege, it means that we have confirmed that they have X amount of U tokens. If they don't, then we've procured it on their behalf because they've sent us fiat. But then equally, if every time a client disables a privilege, we need to sell. That's a bit clunky. We think it's better to just purchase, charge the client a bit more, the net present value, for them to actually unlock these privileges for life, and retire that token. So it reduces the volatility. Having said that, in general, of course, all of this works better and better the more traders there are out there, right? The more gamers. So, for example, if you look at SXUT, SXDT, generally speaking, we have 50% of the daily active traders using this token. And yes, there is volatility in the SXUT price, but it's been managed pretty well, generally speaking. We haven't received very, very, very few. I mean, it would be under 5 complaints about the volatility of the price. So it's a function of two things. A, we need to get the treasury operations done in the back end so that we can do this and we can retire the tokens. And B, we of course need to scale up the product so that the organic liquidity of the token increases such that even if traders or gamers are going bypassing us and they're actually buying the U tokens and selling them um, as and when they want to disable and enable privileges, we will have we won't have such a big impact on the SXUT ETH price. That makes sense. Joe is asking, what do you mean by retire U token burn? So, Joe, if you go back to our white paper, as you know, we said we would be using 3% of profits to purchase U tokens and retire them. That's part of the investment case for the SXUT token. What we are seeing now, having traded live for 1 year, is that the adoption for the U token on the trading platform is around 50%, roughly speaking. And in order to increase this, we don't want to force, we want to basically remove all roadblocks for people that know nothing about crypto. We don't want to educate them about crypto and then tell them, okay, go and purchase the SXUT, because it's not that straightforward. Instead, we can act as a, a third party in the background that does this treasury operation. And then we would just continue our mandate because we don't hold U tokens on our balance sheet, right? We're not a speculative trader with our own tokens. So we would just retire the tokens. Tim is asking any U unlocks you can share regarding BV Spec.x. Not at this stage. We have discussed them, of course, also with the community. We can tell you that they will be similar to what you see on Spectre. For example, higher payouts on Betverse, more virtual coins per purchase. So you get better discounts, effectively. Sorry, better bonus coins. You get access to premium content, premium games. On BV, on the SpecX side, it's predominantly lower commissions, and then also accelerated profit share with your SXDT tokens. These are the sort of the 5 main things, but that's roughly the amount of depth I can get into about that just now. So many, okay, I see a question from Michael Scanlon. So are many of the registered traders waiting for fiat integration? Yes. Okay, yeah, Bart has a good question. Apple recently launched their gaming platform Arcade, which will open second half 2019. Though no betting gaming platform, it will also attract game developers with exclusivity contracts. Will this platform be a competitor for BV? No, it will not. We have done research on this. The answer is no. Apple basically is doing this as a response to a drop in the number of apps being developed. The indie developer community has found out already a few years ago that it's a total long shot if you ever want to make any ROI, let alone break even on your games that you create for Apple. The only people that really benefit are the people that get publishing backing from houses like Chilingo, which is one of Apple's biggest publishers. And of course, Apple, because Apple charges a $99 a year fee to all developers. Fantastic subscription revenue stream, and 30% of profits in case the app goes viral. This model obviously doesn't work anymore because the community has wisened up. And so this is a response by Apple, especially in light of things, of platforms like Steam, and of course, platforms like Google Play. And so BV doesn't really fit into this. I would say we're more in a different niche. Question from Steve: will there be any SXUT privileges available on Spectre Exchange? Yes, Steve. Arash is asking, do you offer leverage trading at some point? Leverage trading, there are no plans on Spectre for this now. It is not something we can say no 100%. If you look at our CFDs that we plan them to be zero leverage. CFDs, generally speaking, but they're also a different product. They're not your traditional CFDs that you'd find, for example, at a Wanda or something. But generally speaking, this isn't something that's in the short-term roadmap. See a question from Harvey. Can you give us more info regarding how SXUT will give benefits to gamers buying the virtual currency inside BV? Yes. So basically, the first point of contact for SXUT and BV would be that you get more bonus coins. For example, if you buy the intro package, which is for $1, you get 100 BV coins, let's say. If you buy the $100 package, you get, let's say, 15,000 BV coins. And let's say the bonus there is 20%, for example. If you have SXUT, the bonus you will get is 50%. So you get that many more coins. So that will be the difference on the coin side. Then, of course, you have the second layer, which is SXUT unlocking higher payouts within games, access to certain games, which are, let's say, very popular, which you only get if you hold SXUT, and so forth. Good question from Tim. He's asking about the U&D ratio and how it affects rewards on the exchange. The maths on that will be, of course, made public when the exchange goes live. But yes, there will be a U&D ratio figure that it will be directly proportional to how much boosted payouts you get if you hold SXDT on the exchange. A question from Joe, marketing and affiliate news. Yes, so the affiliate portal on BV is out. We have, obviously, as you've been communicated, the major hire that we have made in the last few months. They're starting with us very soon. Very happy to have them on board. And obviously, once the engineering developments are complete, we will be able to scale things up and, of course, get the marketing efforts underway. The marketing, of course, with us is not the brute force type. It is predominantly going to continue to be affiliate based. We already have, I believe we've probably touched close to 700 affiliates. I'll need to double check that figure, and we expect to, of course, onboard. Generally speaking, if you look at some of our competitors, they peter out at somewhere around 10 to 15,000 affiliates, right? So we still have some ways to go, but it will be an affiliate-driven model. That's the highest bang for buck there is out there. Okay, question from Eddie. Will the quality requirements for Betverse games increase as more and more added in the future? That's a really interesting question because we have a minimum requirement, which you can go to the developer section of the website and you can see that they have to follow certain human interface guidelines, certain guidelines or best practices in the sector. Because we have a rating system, and because when we flood the community, when Betverse has a few 100,000 gamers, the review system generally will make the best ones rise to the top, and the crappy games will just fall to the bottom very quickly. They won't get much shelf space. In the new and noteworthy section, we will only feature the games we believe have the most potential, right? But we won't hamper or completely cut the arms off of developers that are maybe new, that are just wanting to create a game to kind of get their toes a bit wet and things like this. We don't want to stifle creativity and development and say, okay, we just want Angry Birds level or higher type of mini game. So the answer is no. We'll just let the community decide what kind of survives and what dies out. But I will say that if you look at the 3D games that are under development, the fact that many of them already have multiplayer, and if you compare it to some of the games we have on there right now, the mix of quality definitely is moving up and up and up. So this time next year, I would expect For example, all games will be the minimum of Crypto Blast 3, the minimum, right? And then all the way up to very, very fancy looking games, which are Unity based, which are Unreal Engine based, which are actually downloadable builds that connect to the DALP, if that makes sense. Of course, the web games on the P2P side, the quick challenges, the mobile side, those are not downloadable, those are web based. Um, Even there's room for improvement in quality. We think that will continue as well, but we're not going to explicitly censor content just because if it's not a good game, for example. Yeah, it's a good question from Maurizio. The apps for both Betverse and Spectre are only for Android. That's correct, yes. At first, we're going for the bulk of the market, which is 85% market share as Android, roughly 85%. And then, of course, when the resources permit it, developer resources, it's not difficult for us to create an iOS app within 3 months, for example, including testing. Okay. No, Harvey, that was just an example of 50%. If you look at competitors like Apex, if you look at competitors like League of Legends, um, if you look at PvP Pro, the bonuses that they get on their virtual coins are ranging from anywhere from 5% to 20%. With regards to quantities on how many SXUTs are unlocked, that's not information we can give at this moment. Okay. Good question from Marco. How much is Spectre spending monthly on salary for employees and all of this stuff? What are your total monthly expenses? Great question. So the figure is around 100K. This figure is currently to around 20% of other teams which are of similar size in the space, or some teams which are just bigger but are bloated. Now, in terms of how much weekly reward will need to be increased that you are completely independent, good question. So in terms of break even, very roughly speaking, we need to grow the business somewhere to reach break even, probably in the range of 5 to 6 times, roughly speaking. And then obviously profitability comes after that. But reaching break even is the first most important goal, and that's something we're working on. You're asking in terms of the time frame. The time frame we would expect is hopefully by this time next year to be break even, latest by Q3 of next year. If, of course, things go much better than planned, then you can cut 6 months off of that, roughly. Steve is asking about how will BV disputes over winner and losers be managed. So algorithmic outcomes, for example, in the mini games, those are just what they are. There can't be any disputes there because it's kind of just computer generated. On the P2P side for AAA games, when we build that functionality where people can challenge each other manually, in, for example, FIFA on a game of Xbox, we have a dispute resolution mechanism, which we designed last year in November. It's pretty complex. It's a 15-page document that we're going to compress into a 5-step process. But it's there, and it will be on the website, and you will see how dispute resolution works. I will say that we think something like GG Play, where the wins are just purely algorithmic, you have your custom servers that, you kill somebody, you get paid. It's all algorithmic. There is no opportunity for dispute. We think something like that has much more scalability than a system where users are manually reporting their wins and losses, and where agreement is required or quorum is required. And if there's a dispute, then screenshots need to be submitted and a dispute resolution council steps in. We don't think that has big legs in this industry, given the attention spans of kids these days, and given the availability of options like Overwolf-based games, which allow for algorithmic determination, win or loss determination. So we have the process in place. You'll see how it is when it goes live, but it's not exactly something that we're so excited about. Um, that part of the thing, one would think that obviously AAA games and allowing people to bet against each other kind of uh, would go big. We are of course building the functionality, but it's not something that we think today's gaming environment. Um, the gamers of yesteryear possibly, but the gamers of today possibly not. Yeah, Arash is asking, are you looking to be listed on any other big exchanges like Binance? It's a fact. It's a function of cost, to be honest. Um, we don't find the other exchanges make any sense from a security standpoint. And then you talk about more respected exchanges, which are secure, like Binance. Um, we don't think the cost is really justified. So the answer is no for now. Harvey's asking about the types of games, the genres that are being developed for BV. Racing, chess, strategy, um, uh, FPS, if you count GG Play, um, RPG games. Just thinking, yeah, those are the main ones. There is a roulette game that has been developed um, in a pretty fluent manner. It's taken 3-4 months. Looks pretty good. It looks pretty decent. So that would probably be the first roulette game featured on Betverse. I'm not sure if you could count it a game per se. I mean, it's more gambling, but yeah, that's being developed. There's a golf game which should already be live, or if not live yet, probably any day. And there is just thinking, a soccer game as well. There's no tennis game. Yeah. Regarding adult content, we run a poll. 80% of the community had favored that we should be agnostic. We should allow adult content games to be uh, placed on Betverse. Right now, there's no development of any adult content games. We have no issue with it. We have no problem with it. Of course, it would only be available to a certain demographic. But at this moment, there's no game underway. Okay. Tim is asking, in time, will gamers have the ability to create custom contracts with one another? For example, they can compete in Apex on who will get more kills rather than who finishes in a higher place. So this depends on whether a company like Electronic Arts, which owns Apex, offers custom servers. Because if it offers custom servers, the answer is most likely yes. Apex doesn't offer custom servers, but CS:GO does. So, and a lot of good games do, like Dota 2, etc. So, um, in the games that do, the answer is yes. This can eventually happen. It's not something GG Play will offer first. Betverse GG Play will offer first, but yeah. Question from Pepe: any MOBA games genres for GG Play like League of Legends or Dota 2, or just FPS genre? First, it's just FPS. It's the CS:GO. But then obviously, as you know, Overwolf offers Dota 2 connectivity. They offer custom servers. So we will definitely be connecting Dota 2 as well. Okay. Have you already seen some? This is from Bart. Have you already seen some tokens on your radar that can be listed on SpectX later after doing your DD? No, we haven't. In fact, the ones we had a bit of hope for went bust, and or have wound up shop. So far, I haven't seen anything unless you see something. The key thing for listing on our exchange, would be a company that is near or approaching break even. So it would need to have some sort of traction. We are not going to be listing tokens where it's just marketing, right? And it's just burning ICO reserves, because ultimately those projects will go bust. And when they go bust, um, we don't want to tend to a bunch of rabid token holders telling us, well, why did you allow us to trade the token on your exchange? We can always point them to the terms and conditions, but ultimately they will hold us culpable. And this is the sad nature of man, but this is how they work. They want to look for excuses, and so we don't want to be in the firing range when that happens. The fact of the matter is that right now, 95% of the coin market cap won't be available in 3 years. 3 to 5 years from now, 95% of the projects you see will be gone, obliterated. So we need to be very careful about the tokens we list, because once we list, we want them to be around and we want them to grow as a business, right? Otherwise, it's just short-term volume profit that we make, how much ever few thousands that is, right? Question from Maria: do you already have a PSP partner? Yes, we do. We For BV, we have a pretty significant PSP partner. For Spectre, we're working with two potential ones, and one is a kind of a quote unquote plan B, where we would go. So it's kind of done, but we're trying to get the best possible solution for that one. Okay, a question from Harvey Specter: how will the onboarding of AA titles work? Will you accept requests like, can we play and gamble on Mario Kart? We wish we could have added Nintendo titles using the emulators and connecting via API to the emulators. The problem is Nintendo is very litigious. So from a legal standpoint, they just simply won't allow it. So the retro games, as big as we think that could be, it's not something we can explore just now, but it's something we'll always keep on the radar, right? Okay, I see a question from Arash. If there's no plan to be listed on any other exchanges, do you have any other plan to bring more volume and raise the token's prices? In terms of token price growth, please bear in mind that our tokens have dramatically, I mean, it's not just small, it's a dramatic outperformance of the underlying market. Arash, as you know, the underlying market is down anywhere from 70 to 100%. Our tokens, the U token is maybe down 20, 30%. The SXDT token is actually up. In a bull market, this would have been a pronounced differential between where our token would be and where the underlying market is. Ultimately, the only thing that can drive token prices up sustainably is for us to scale up these products significantly. We have the traction, the figures are there. We have traction for sure. That's not even a question anymore. The question is, of course, now scaling this up. And for this, we need to re-engineer the platforms for a fiat world, because crypto is dead. It's broken. It may never recover. If it does, it will take half a decade. So the only way to get token prices up is to pay more rewards. The only way to do that is to get more volumes to the system. The only way to do that is to get more traction, more usage. And that's exactly what we aim to do. Getting a token on an exchange just to pump and shill up the price so certain token holders can benefit, that's just never been our strategy, and it's not something we're going to do. So this is the long haul. If you're with us, you're with us for the long run. And this is how a proper company is built. So this will be the natural progression. If we deliver on our goals, the token price will be rewarded with that. Not least to mention, look, we own 40% of token supply. Please note that 40 cents of every dollar paid out goes back to us. It is in our interest to procure as many of these tokens as possible. So when the business is well profitable, we have every intention to compete with you out there and buy back our tokens as well. UND, right? So in answer to your question, what would that do to the token price? Well, I mean, basic economics can answer that. I'm not here to give investment advice, but it's very important to note that this is not a project that is looking to use ICO reserves to get on Binance and shill. And mind you, we have more traction than 95% of projects out there already. I said it, and you can verify this. We could use this, get on Binance, and shill the shit out of it, right? And get a temporary pump, but it's no way a long-term strategy, and it 100% always results in disaster. And so this is just not the route we will go down. It might be a painful answer for some of you to hear, but I think it's a very good answer for those of you that are disaligned or misaligned with this strategy of mine. You probably know what needs to be done next. But from my side, from the management team side, it's a very, very different strategy we're pursuing here. We have some very considerable plans in the gaming industry, uh, and of course, to pay the bills in the financial trading sector in the short term. In the long run for the project, this is a 5, 10, 15-year play. So again, with the Binance and stuff, if Binance is happy to drop their prices to a $500 listing fee, maybe $1,000, which is what we believe it is worth, we can maybe consider it with some negotiation. But right now, the economics just don't add up. Okay, question from Tim Vervat. Any unique game methods under discussion for BV, such as tournaments, weekly, monthly? Yes, absolutely. Piloting right now hourly tournaments on some of the top mini games. There will be, there's a demo version of BV where you play with demo money and a real, right? Both will have its own ranking and monthly prizes for people who are at the top of the ranking. Now, of course, the prizes are small. It's like BV shirts and paraphernalia, right? Because we don't want to, simply put, we don't want to spend our reserves on that or profits on that. But generally speaking, all these elements which make a gaming community more of a community, apart from, of course, the USPs where we have, for example, the DALP betting, the P2P betting, there will be tournaments, there will be high scores as well. And to this end, we have brought on some good talent. Very pleased to be working with one of our testers who's an avid gamer. I mean, he's crazy how much experience he's got, and he's actually working on adding some much longer term games, RPG games, where you can build a community around it, where scores can be transferred between these games as well, and as opposed to just the small mini games that you see as well. So those measures are in place. Thank you, Steve. Yes, Harvey has a good question. He's asking, are Spectre employees permitted to buy SXDT and SXUT tokens outside of the tokens allocated as part of their remuneration package? The answer is yes, and they do. We have had some purchases already. Okay. Any final questions? Yeah. Bart's asking how many token holders will attend the AGM. Is the venue already known? Can we still subscribe for the AGM? I believe you can. You just have to send an email. Please note there's a strict KYC process. We want to know who exactly you are, how many tokens you hold, if you hold tokens. So please answer those questions as well. We just need to cross-check with our database. Right now, around 40 attendees have been verified. The venue is, of course, unknown as well. Okay. Thank you guys for the feedback. Question from Michael Scannon. Any plans to sell SXT2 to corporate? Can you please elaborate on that question? I think I understand what you're saying, but if you can just parse it out a bit for me. Good question from Pepe. What is your view on mobile gaming versus VR gaming? Do you think that BV can get a nice cut from mobile gaming, especially in Asia? And the answer to this, I think if you look at the installed base, again, don't quote me, but I think last year there were some 223 million PCs sold worldwide. and again, I say don't quote me on this because I looked at this research six months ago. In 2017, pardon me, there were around 200 million PCs sold, and of that, 10%, so around 22 million VR headsets were sold. So the installed base is growing at a very, very quick clip, and it's becoming something one can't ignore. I think VR gaming is very, very big if taken on an ultra long term view. So 2025 plus. There's a lot of kinks. It's still quite clunky at the moment. The tech is clunky. It has medical impacts as well on a certain amount of the populace. So it's not something that I think will go mainstream. But at a certain point, I would say BV, 2 years from now, things have gone well. We would definitely need to look at the sector more seriously because there are going to be some very, very big, and I hate to use this word, game changing applications in the VR world that we don't see now. They could be bigger than what we see with Facebook, with Tinder, and a lot of these mobile apps that bring people together. So I think, will VR be bigger than mobile? That's very difficult to say, but certainly it's a space we cannot ignore for too long. The second part of your question is, can BV get a nice cut from mobile gaming, especially in Asia? Definitely. Look, a lot of the games we develop for the Asian market will have an element of P2W, which is pay to win. The Asians love to pay to upgrade their armory, their weapons, and what have you. And we're definitely going to be pandering to that in a big way as well. So we can definitely get a slice of that market. There's no doubt in my mind. We need to be a bit careful about the ARPU, the average revenue per user in that region. For example, India, we were looking at purchasing a company 2 months ago. Very nice website, good looking app, decent games, a lot of users as well. I think they had a few million installs, uh, but they were making, I think, something like $600 a month in revenue. And we dug deeper, and the fact of the matter is, the value of an Indian gamer at this moment is close to zero. And so spending money there in that market can result in financial disaster. So within Asia, you need to bifurcate it more, go deeper. I mean, obviously, China is a huge market, especially the Chinese indie FPS market with the P2W. It's it's a gold mine there. So the answer is we definitely plan to tap that with BV. Okay. Question from Steve Daly: how near to launch is Phantasm? Okay, I'm glad you brought this up. So it's very important to note that we have nothing to do with Phantasm as a business. Mike, so far, who is heading up Phantasm, the project, has been very careful in his diligence on creating the MVP. The MVP is basic. I had a look at it. Equally, I will say that it is one of the most good-looking websites I have ever seen, and you can check this out yourself. It really, really is smooth. API connectivity still needs to happen. Testing needs to happen. All of these are questions that are for Phantasm. Our alliance is purely on the liquidity provision side, right? So we will be, the DALP will be offering some degree of liquidity to the platform, effectively in return for a fee per bet placed. And for those of you that are wondering what is Phantasm, it's a complete separate project. It has nothing to do with our team. It is, however, one of the projects that borrows liquidity, unused liquidity from the liquidity pool. And since Betverse, we have no interest in entering esports and your traditional sports betting market, and Phantasm wishes to focus on that, we thought that this would be the best route to tackle this. This is, again, just a quick background for those of you wondering what is Phantasm. Okay, question from Damien D. Will you list Spectre team purchases? Yes. Directors' dealings require us to list all sales and purchases, and we will do that. Sure, John. Okay, I think Michael is elaborating on his question to sell to investment companies. Yes, we definitely will. We have every intention to raise. So, for example, if a family office, unfortunately, we had a really strange incident with a fake family office at the end of last year. Quite comical, but look, we learned from it. Um, Obviously, if it's a well-known family office, and there are some, our investor relations team is always talking to investors who are interested in a strategic stake. We are open to talks, um, and it can be in theory, it can be a three-tiered investment, inclusive of all three or just one of each. It can be directly into our tokens that are in the free float that are openly traded. It can be in our treasury tokens, which are ours, but that comes with heavy vesting periods. Or it can be at the parent equity in the actual company. We have been, of course, approached by smaller players, but at this moment, the minimum sort of strategic investments that we are seeking are of a kind of a different level, and would also allow us to bolster up the team and scaling dramatically. But it's not something that we're interested in kind of bothering the community with or anything like that. Mainly because we're very well funded, and when you're in that position, you don't really want to, uh, unnecessarily open the gates to investment, which may dilute and what have you. But the answer is yes. I mean, family offices, if you think about it, they're always in search for yielding investments. And generally speaking, family offices are now on average getting 2% yield, 1 to 2% yield. When our yield becomes more competitive, 5%, 6%, when we start from a risk adjusted basis, when we start to become more competitive as investment than, let's say, investing in Nestle bonds, right, which give you 3% net or 2.7%, that's when that's when the investor interest will increase a lot, and we're definitely open then. Maurizio is asking, when is the internal exchange coming around? Around June-ish. It is a separate platform, and the main mandate is to allow the safe trading of our tokens under a strict KYC AML environment, strictly closed to US citizens. Harvey Spectre saying, are there any barriers to entry for competitors to replicate BV? No, I mean, look, it takes cradle to grave 6 months to get a license. It takes 3 months after that to integrate a PSP. Excuse me. Then you can't just create a game and connect it to a liquidity pool. You need to have a liquidity pool that is larger than ours, so you can offer more competitive payouts, right? And on top of that, you need to actually understand the security measures that is built into all of our games. It's not just your traditional game, it's a game that heavily monitors anti-cheating and other things, um, which allows us to see if it was a genuine session or if it was a fake session, right? So to give you an example, you can use a slowdown plugin to slow down a lot of Flash games. On our system, it will pick it up in the back end. So engineering all these algorithms has taken us almost 8 months. So we would say that these are the advantages we would have over a new entrant in the space. So roughly speaking, about a year. But there are no patent-based barriers to entry. Pepe is asking, will there be more announced partnerships with companies like Overwolf? Yeah, I mean, if it's a company worth announcing a partnership with, then yes. And the most important thing is, how does it actually improve the volumes per week, the SXDT rewards, the uptake of SXUT? If a partnership doesn't impact that in the short term or immediately, then it's not a partnership worth announcing. Any final questions? Last call for questions, please. Okay, I see a question from Triwiani. Sorry, I think I missed your question earlier. Can you give your personal opinion of the state of the crypto market? Yes, sure. Basically, it's foobar. Um, Somewhere in the range of 1,000 projects have failed. Um, you're seeing a lot of wind downs now. Some respectable exits where client capital is handed back, if possible. If not possible, it's kind of forgotten. Um, you are seeing companies that are burning very, very perverse amounts of money, 500 to 1 million a month type of range. No revenues, no traction. They will run out of money within the next 1 or 2 years. Some may last three. Um, Blockchain adoption is just not happening as people had expected. As expected, there is some positive developments as well. For example, uh, Bitcoin, the number of transactions, that has kind of uh, hit its bottom and it's recovered a lot since then. And in my personal opinion, and it's not investment advice, I believe this will only continue up in the future. I'm personally bullish on Bitcoin because I think it genuinely serves a real purpose. I also believe Ethereum in the longer term, um, from a technological standpoint, the scaling issues, all these will be overcome. But um, I do also believe that what has happened in this last year is two things. People have realized blockchain technology, even if things had worked, is just not that important. The importance of decentralization is overstated, not to the extent Nouriel Roubini goes on about it, but it's overstated, and therefore there's a very significant fat in valuations across the board. I think those are going to come down. Where my targets are for Ethereum. I'm not going to state them on this webinar again because it angers a lot of people, but unfortunately, I'm a bear on that. So I do believe the worst is yet to come, and we've just seen the beginning in a lot of projects, and with it, this will drag down the prices of other blockchains. I do believe we will see a decoupling between Bitcoin and this, and there is something interesting that's happening in the enterprise side of blockchain. So a lot of big banks that we have also been in touch with for our own treasury needs, a lot of big companies like IBM have developed solutions that involve blockchain, but they use it for their own clients. They offer it as a service. It's known as blockchain as a service. They charge for it. It's subscription based. It's API call based. These chains are more like side chains. They're more private in nature, and there is an element of centralization. You saw that with the Quorum blockchain of JP Morgan. So there, unfortunately, the public blockchains, EOS and these, Ethereum, in my personal opinion, I could be very wrong. I think when you have these big boys out there that offer enterprise grade security behind these blockchains, 24-hour support, proper scalability, and the necessary degree of centralization when it's required, and I know that's a bit of an oxymoron in a decentralized space, I think these are the companies that will capture the market share for industrial applications of blockchain. I mean, the legal side, I mean, supply side, supply chain management, shipping, medical industry. These industries, I think, will gravitate towards that. I don't think they're going to be using free blockchains out there. There's just too much wrong with them. Um, and I think, again, I would like to say this is my view, and I may be very wrong, but I have to say it. I view Ethereum longer term as the Wikipedia of blockchain. It'll be a free resource that will allow certain projects to get off the ground. It will be scalable, but no listed company or profitable company will rely their future profits or any part of their operation on a listed chain. It's the same way that you wouldn't cite Wikipedia necessarily when you're writing your PhD thesis, right? So this is kind of where we kind of get at, I think. Certainly in the next 5 years. Maybe in the ultra long term, so 10, 15 years, the whole world will go decentralized. And with it, money as we know it, right? So all currencies, there will be decentralized versions. That's very possible. But then I do ask myself, like, what does that actually mean for the top 95% of the current CMC constituents? all these blockchains that are starting up now, especially 2 years late, or the ones that started 2 years ago that say, look, we're going to be the new money. I really do wonder if those have any future. Um, so Nicholas is asking, how many financial traders are there in crypto compared to fiat? In fiat, there are around 4.2 million retail financial traders that trade FX predominantly. The equities pot is smaller. I don't have that figure with me, but roughly that's the figure. In crypto, at its peak, apparently the figure was 14 million. 10 to 14 million, if I'm not wrong, and I think that was Coinbase's figure in 2017. And I don't know how much that figure now. If I had to take a guess, I mean, obviously adjusting for the lies that have been told to us by some of the exchanges, that have been told to us by the degenerate publications that broadcast news and disseminate news and provide fake news in this sector, I would say maybe 10,000 traders, maybe 1,000, maybe even 100. Maybe it's just you and me, Nick. I don't know. I'm kidding, of course. The point I'm trying to make is the figure is far, far smaller than broadcast. 30 to 50% of volumes are fake. Yeah, so I would say the figure is much, much smaller than the 4.2 million you have in retail trading. Okay, a question from Tim Vervat, good one. Will you offer a dedicated community for gamers either via forum or Discord? Discord, yes. Forum, there was a forum created by a community enthusiast. I understand that forum was hacked, and the plans for that forum have been wound down. We're very happy with that. We think that's okay. We of course didn't engineer the hack for the conspiracy theorists out there, but I think Discord is great. I think Discord makes a lot of sense, and it'll be community run. Personally, I would like to see a forum. I'm a bit more old school, so I like the forum thing. And look, if you look at Bitcoin and the Bitcoin forum, I think it's BTC Talk. It is categorically one of the most outdated forums I've ever seen. I mean, it's literally from the early 90s, but it's so popular. It's well run, relatively, and it's good for the space generally. So I think a forum would do. I would love to see one come about, but it's not something we're going to be investing in. So if community members want to give it a go, they have our blessings. Okay, Bart, thank you for your kind feedback. We really appreciate it. And of course, for all the other feedback as well. It's much appreciated. Uh, in terms of Nicholas's follow-up question, he's asking how many volatility products gamblers are there. We think the figure is around. Well, it's kind of that's a difficult one. I don't think there's any market data. We know that certainly one of our biggest competitors has around 15,000 um, daily actives, but I wouldn't be able to give you a more concrete figure because it's a very specific question that you've asked. Okay, a question from Steve. With that in mind, ETH just being a blockchain like Wiki, will SXDT payments be migrated to another chain? If the chain is, let's say, it's backed by IBM, right, or it's backed by Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, or I'm talking industrial strength, billions have gone into its development or a few hundred million. It's very quick. Gas costs are not high. It's something we can even, envisage using for the decentralized portion of Spectre trading. Then yes, very happy to migrate. At this moment, and I'm probably going to get beaten up by everyone when I say this, but I'm happy to hold a tin pot over my head. Ethereum is the best blockchain. Sorry. For all you EOS fanatics out there and Tron, just no. So do what Ethereum has done first, beat them, and then we'll be happy to look at migration. But right now, there's just no real need. Yes, a good question from Nick. Nick is asking how the bots and API affect volumes. The answer is very dramatic. 75% of traded volumes of financial betting across the world are done via API today. They're done via bots. So it's auto trading. Our platform today is purely manual, right? So once we onboard API and bots, the ability to attract affiliates that cater to a completely different demographic, right? Traders that just don't even want to trade themselves manually, we can onboard them with obviously uh, finer commercial terms than some of our competitors. Okay, Pepe is asking, can SXUT be implemented in GG Play or BV as a benefit coin or something like that? Well, I think we were thinking the the bounty that you get per kill in a GG Play custom match in CSGO, for example, let's say it's $1. With SXUT, you would just get $1.10, right? In the equivalent of GGC. By the way, GGC is the virtual currency of GG Play. And if things go well, that will be also the currency one-to-one in Betverse, right? So we don't want to have two different currencies. That's just nonsensical. So it'll either be GGC or it'll be BVC, or it'll be just an exchange rate, which is one-to-one. So it's basically like owning the same thing. Okay. Chris is asking, what are you positive about for the blockchain going forward, Mr. Glass Half Empty? Yeah, look, I mean, the blockchain is good if it's fast, if it's very secure, and if it's low cost to transact. Right now, the blockchain is not fast, it is not secure. Sorry to say that, and it's high cost to transact. Once you can bring these three roadblocks down, I genuinely believe blockchain can be very transformational to quite a few sectors. Um, the legal industry, the supply chain industry, the medical industry. Um, there are a lot of use cases for the blockchain that that will be monetizable once this is there. So if we see these blockchains actually becoming secure, fast, low cost, um, then the future is very bright for certain projects in the space. I cannot give a more bullish outlook. It would just be spamming, right? It would just be shilling um, and talking up our own book, although we're not really even blockchain anymore. But this is just a reality, right? Last call for questions. Final call. Okay, Steve is asking, is the team looking after themselves, health, etc.? Yes, Steve, we appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, guys, final call for questions before we call it quits. Okay. Harvey asking, good question. Can you give us a glimpse into the internal goals for SXDT and the DALP in 10 to 20 years? Very happy to do so at the AGM, Harvey. It would be a very long discussion and not one that I could initiate just now for the purpose of time, but would be very happy to do that in person. It's a good question from Zisis. Hello, Zisis. Okay. Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely Sunday.